Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise and gets straight to the insights you need. Have you ever been on a project where you're really craving structure? Clear deadlines, a solid plan, but then the world just throws you a curveball. Priorities shift, maybe new opportunities pop up, and suddenly that really well-laid plan feels more like a hindrance than a help. You kind of feel stuck,
Mm.
right? Trying to balance that order with the undeniable need for agility. If that tension sounds familiar, then you're going to appreciate what we're exploring today. Scrumban. It's a pretty powerful hybrid approach, really designed to offer the best of both worlds. So our mission today is to cut through all the jargon, make you truly well-informed about Scrumban. We'll dig into its origins, look at exactly how it works in practice, highlight its real advantages, and even show you how real teams are using it right now. For everything from like complex product development to really dynamic marketing campaigns, we're going to help you understand how to blend that structured planning with continuous, flexible flow so you can adapt and deliver, no matter what comes your way. And to guide us, we've pulled from a whole stack of great sources. We've got authoritative guides from industry leaders like Atlassian and Agile Sherpas, plus practical real-world case studies and some deep dives into the tools that make it all happen. So let's get started with our deep dive.
Yeah, let's do it. And it's important to remember, Scrumman didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It really evolved by learning from the strengths and, maybe more importantly, the limitations of two big Agile methods, Scrum and Kanban. To really get Scrumban, we kind of need to quickly recap what each of those brings to the table first.
Exactly. And I think for many of our listeners, Scrum is probably the most familiar starting point. Could you just quickly highlight its defining features for us? What makes Scrum so popular for structured projects?
Absolutely. So Scrum is fundamentally an iterative framework. Teams deliver work in these fixed-length sprints, typically 1 to 4 weeks long. The big goal for each sprint, as Atlassian puts it, is to produce a potentially shippable product increment, basically something usable, something valuable. Or maybe even a minimum viable product, right? A functional but basic version. And Scrum comes with these really well-defined ceremonies. You've got sprint planning, daily stand-ups, sprint reviews, and retrospectives, plus clear roles, a product owner managing priorities, a Scrum master facilitating, and the dev team doing the work. This structure gives you a strong rhythm, clear accountabilities. That's one of Scrum's biggest strengths.
That structure is definitely key.
Hmm.
But I often hear that while it's great for planning, it can feel a bit rigid once a sprint actually starts,
Mhm.
especially with outside pressures. Is that where its limitations start to show up?
Precisely. Scrum gives you those excellent guardrails for the sprint itself. But one of its limitations, and this is something Scrumban directly addresses, is that it offers, limited guidance on how to manage day-to-day flow of tasks within a sprint. Once planning's done, how tasks actually move from to-do to done, it isn't always super explicit, and that can sometimes lead to blockages or maybe uneven workloads if you're not careful. It's a key tension Scrumman aims to resolve.
Okay, but Scream isn't the only game in town in the Agile world, and this is where Kanban comes in, right? Offer a completely different way to manage workflow.
That's right. Kanban actually came out of Toyota's manufacturing processes, believe it or not. And its whole philosophy is about continuous flow. So instead of fixed sprints, it uses a really visual board, often with simple columns like to do, in progress, done, but combined with a critical element, work in progress limits, WIP limits. The core idea is that teams pull tasks when they have capacity rather than having work pushed onto them in big batches. It's all about minimizing waste, maximizing efficiency.
And what are the sort of fundamental practices that drive that continuous flow in Kanban?
Its core practices are pretty simple but powerful. Visualize your workflow, limit your work in progress, that WIP thing again, and continuously improve. Kaizen. Atlassian notes its focus is really on continuous planning and measuring outcomes. This visual pull-based approach. It's incredibly effective at helping teams spot bottlenecks, optimize their flow, makes work visible. But like Scrum, Kanban has its own assumptions too, mainly that there's already some kind of process in place that you want to optimize, rather than giving you the structure to, say, build a process from scratch. So connecting the dots, Scrumman really emerged to tackle these specific limitations. Scrum had great structure, roles, ceremonies, but maybe less guidance on the day-to-day flow inside the sprint. Kanban, on the other hand, fantastic flow management, but kind of assumed you already had a process. Scrumman just bridges that gap, gives teams a way to get the best of both.
So having laid that groundwork, let's bring it all together. How do we really define Scrumban, this hybrid hero?
Okay, so definition-wise, Scrumban is a hybrid agile method. It takes Scrum's structure and injects Kanban's flexibility. Typically, you'll keep Scrum elements like a backlog, maybe a regular rhythm for planning or reviews, often retrospectives too, but critically, it adopts Kanban practices like the visual boards and those strict WIP limits, so you're still planning iteratively, often in cycles, but within those cycles, you allow for continuous pull-based flow.
That blend sounds incredibly adaptable. What's the main reason, the core rationale for combining these two?
The rationale is pretty straightforward, and sources like Atlassian and Agile Sherpas point this out. You get that regular planning and review cycle from Scrum, but you also get the smooth, continuous flow from Kanban. This makes Scrumban really well suited for environments where priorities change fast. Think marketing, maybe, or teams supporting mature products. Places where strict, unchanging Scrum sprints might just cause work to stall or pile up. Instead of these rigid commitments, teams can react to new information quickly without totally derailing everything.
Okay, that makes sense conceptually. But let's unpack this a bit for our listeners. How do you actually get started? What does implementing Scrumban look like in practice?
Right, the practical stuff. Step one is really assembling your team and defining roles. You absolutely need a clear backlog owner. This could be a product manager or maybe a marketing owner in that context, someone who owns the priorities. You also need someone to facilitate the process, like a scrum master or maybe an agile coach. And the rest of the team, they're the specialists doing the work. Designers, developers, content creators, marketers, whoever you need. What's interesting is, unlike pure Scrum's push for fully cross-functional teams, Scrumban is often a bit looser. It embraces specialized roles more readily, which is often just more realistic for diverse teams. Next up, you absolutely need to map your workflow and create a board. This is huge. You visualize your whole process, typically columns like to do, in progress, done, But you can, and probably should, customize these. Add more specific stages like ready for review, QA, awaiting client feedback, whatever fits your flow. Like ClickUp says, managing a Scrumman project without a board is like cooking without a pot, nearly impossible. It's where everything happens. Then comes a really critical step, setting work in progress limit, WIP limits. These limits dictate how many tasks can be in each column at any single time. Super important. It's vital for stopping your team from getting overloaded, preventing burnout. Plus, as Atlassian notes, it clearly shows stakeholders your team's actual capacity. So, for example, if you have, say, 2 graphic designers, you might set a WIP limit of 2 in your design column. And these limits need to be strictly enforced. If a column's full, the team focuses on finishing that work before pulling anything new in. This often takes a real mindset shift, The temptation is always to start more stuff. But it forces focus, reduces context switching, and ultimately makes workflow faster, more predictably.
Right, limiting WIP makes total sense for preventing overload. I can imagine that takes some real discipline at first, though it's so tempting to just grab the next shiny thing, isn't it? It kind of challenges our intuition to always be busy. But in a system that relies on this continuous flow, how do teams really organize and prioritize all that incoming work effectively, especially without those fixed Scrum sprint planning sessions?
Yeah, good question. You organize and prioritize the backlog collaboratively, often in a session that feels a bit like Scrum's backlog grooming or refinement. You break work down into tasks, rank them by priority, and make sure each task has a clear definition of done, so everyone knows what finished means. ClickUp suggests using priority flags like urgent or high, so the team always knows what to pull next. Usually, a product owner or marketing owner drives this prioritization, making sure the most valuable stuff is always at the top, ready to go. Now, about those agile ceremonies, the key in Scrumban is to run them as needed, not rigidly. You often keep the useful Scrum events, daily stand-ups for quick updates, maybe reviews or demos with stakeholders for feedback, definitely retrospectives for improvement. But here's the twist, like Agile Sherpas suggest. Planning should be more context-driven, maybe triggered when the backlog gets low or when a big new piece of work lands, not just because the calendar says so. You need the flexibility to shorten ceremonies or even drop one if it's not adding value right then. It's about value, not just following rules. Okay, so priorities are set, WIP limits are in place. Now it's time to actually start the workflow. Team members literally pull tasks from the prioritized backlog into in progress when they have capacity, and the WIP limit for that column allows it. Daily stand-ups then become focused on the board, what's moving, any blockers. Are we respecting the WIT limits? Less about individual commitments to a sprint goal.
So it's really about getting that work flowing smoothly and then constantly tweaking the process to make it even better. How do you keep an eye on that, make sure it's genuinely working effectively?
That's exactly where monitoring and adapting comes in. It's that spirit of Kaizen, continuous improvement. It's baked in. You regularly look at the board, look at your metrics. If tasks start piling up in one column, bang, that's a bottleneck. Needs attention. Maybe you need to pair people up on tasks, reallocate someone, or maybe even adjust the process itself, add a step, remove one. You also need to be ready to adjust the process based on what you see. If tasks aren't getting finished in a reasonable cycle, maybe shorten your cycles or tighten WIP limits. If columns are often empty, maybe you can relax limits slightly, or you need to look at prioritization again. The board gives you that real-time visual feedback for constant optimization.
Okay, so we've walked through the practical how-to of getting Scrumban going and refining it. But the really compelling question is, what's the why? What makes Scrumban truly shine? Why choose it over, say, just sticking with Scrum or Kanban?
Well, a huge advantage is that flexibility to pivot. Think about it. In a strict Scrum sprint, you lock things down. If a sudden market shift happens or an urgent client need pops up, it creates massive tension. You either disrupt the sprint or ignore something critical. But Scrumban's pull system means you finish your current task, and then crucially, you immediately pull the new highest priority item. No more breaking sprints, just continuous adaptive flow. Agile Sherpas and Parable both really emphasize this. It's not just about changing priorities, it's about making the cost of late changes almost disappear. Teams can just react fluidly. Another key benefit is continuous delivery. Scrum usually aims to deliver a batch of work at the end of a sprint. Scrumban, taking cues from Kanban, really encourages continuous delivery of value. As soon as a task or feature is done, tested, meets the definition of done, it can potentially be shipped. You don't have to wait for an arbitrary sprint boundary. Canavos notes this means stakeholders get value more often, feedback loops are faster, and you realize benefits sooner. Scrumman can also cut down on waste and overhead quite significantly. By planning when it's actually needed rather than on a fixed schedule, teams can often avoid unnecessary meetings or spending ages grooming a backlog that might change anyway. You can sidestep those potentially huge sprint kickoff meetings if priorities are volatile. Plus, allowing for specialized roles rather than forcing everyone into a purely cross-functional model acknowledges reality in many teams and can be more efficient. A designer is a designer, a developer is a developer, and of course, better flow management is central. Pure Scrum doesn't have explicit WIP control baked in. Scrumman's strict WIP limits are designed to prevent multitasking and stop the team from getting overcommitted. Parable really highlights this. Limiting WIP creates focus, forces those tough prioritization decisions, reduces context switching, cuts down bottlenecks. Everything's visible on the board, total transparency. Bottlenecks become visually obvious, demanding attention right away. And finally, it often offers an easier transition path for teams. If you're a Scrum team wanting to move towards more flow, like Kanban, Scrumban is a kind of gentle hybrid step. Atlassian actually points out it started partly as a way to transition teams. It can work the other way too, for Kanban teams wanting a bit more structure from Scrum. So you end up with this highly customizable framework that can adapt to where a team is right now, making adoption feel less daunting.
So these advantages are really clear. But for our listener, what does this actually look like in the real world? How are teams using Scrumban day-to-day to solve their problems? And what kind of tools are helping them do it?
Oh, we see fantastic examples, especially in marketing teams. Look at GoGo InFlight's marketing operations. They found Scrum's rigid 2-week sprints just didn't fit their campaign schedules. Trying to jam advertising and sponsorship timelines into fixed cycles was a constant headache, so they shifted to Scrumban. They kept Scrum's terms and planning rituals, but brought in Kanban's visual board and pull system, the result. They reported improved transparency and gained the ability to set different time boxes for tasks based on request type. Much smoother handling of ad hoc requests alongside planned campaigns. Agile Sherpas actually called it a breath of fresh air for creative teams like that. For a team like GoGo's, a tool like Monday.com or maybe Trello could be ideal. Very visual, highly customizable boards, great for adapting to varied marketing workflows, and it's incredibly popular in product development too. The House of Angular case study is a great one. Their dev team started with Scrum, 2-week sprints, but frequent priority changes kept leading to unfinished sprints and frustration. Sound familiar? When they switched to Scrumban, they ditched the fixed sprint lengths. Instead, they worked in cycles tied more closely to actual release readiness. This let them adapt better to sudden changes, which no longer disturbed our operations. Big win. Improved communication, better balance between new features and ongoing maintenance. Now, for a robust product dev team like that, Jira from Atlassian is often a natural fit. It handles WIP limits, complex backlogs, detailed reporting, really good for adapting to those shifting priorities. Of course, tools like ClickUp explicitly support Scrumban too, offering multiple views and priority settings. Others like Asana, Taiga, Teamhood. Lots of options. Key is finding one with customizable boards, WIP settings, and useful analytics.
That's great hearing how it works in practice and seeing the tools that support it. So for teams adopting Scrumban, how do you actually know if it's working, if your efforts are paying off? What should you be measuring to make sure you're truly improving and delivering value?
That's a really important question because with Scrumban, you shift your focus quite dramatically towards lean agile flow metrics. It's less about traditional Scrum metrics like story points or velocity. It's a different mindset. You're moving from measuring output, how much stuff did we finish, to measuring the efficiency of flow, how smoothly and predictably is value moving through our system. So we look at things like work in progress, WIP. Just tracking the number of tasks currently being worked on. If that number suddenly spikes, it might signal inefficiency or overcommitment. Are we spreading ourselves too thin? Cycle time. This is the average time it takes for a task to go from start to done, usually measured in days. Lower and crucially more consistent cycle times mean a healthy, predictable flow. Cycle time really forces you to look at the whole value stream, see where work gets stuck, and figure out why. It's not just counting things at the end. Throughput. This is simply just the count of items completed in a given period, like a week or a month. Useful for forecasting how much you might get done in the future. And service level expectations, SLE. This is more probabilistic. Based on your historical cycle times, it answers questions like, typically, by when are 80% of our tasks usually finished? Incredibly powerful for setting realistic expectations with stakeholders. Parable's guide explains these flow metrics are often more accurate and actionable, and frankly, easier to explain to stakeholders than some traditional Scrum metrics. Why? Because they directly relate to the speed and predictability of delivering actual value. Now, while these flow metrics are crucial for tuning the Scrumban process itself, you absolutely must remember to also track your higher level product or marketing specific KPIs too, things like user adoption, campaign ROI, customer satisfaction. You need both views, process health and business outcomes.
And there you have it. This deep dive has really shown us that Scrumban offers this truly dynamic blend of Scrum structure, Kanban's flexibility. It seems like a powerful path towards continuous improvement, towards adaptability, empowering teams to navigate all that constant change in modern work without sacrificing clarity or predictability. You now have the insights, hopefully, to understand why and how you might implement this powerful hybrid approach. So as you go about your week, maybe consider a project or a process in your own work, one that often gets bogged down by shifting priorities or maybe feels too rigid. How might adopting just one or two Scrumban principles, like maybe just visualizing your workflow on a simple board or trying out a strict WIP limit for one stage, how might that begin to transform that bottleneck into a smoother, more predictable flow? That's all for this deep dive. We really hope this has given you plenty to think about. Until next time, keep learning and keep building. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and share it, with others who might benefit too. To learn more about product management and digital marketing, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.